Hi, Becky. Hi, Matt.
Oh, how's everyone?
I almost said good morning. I almost said good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. And it just goes to show it's all been one long blur of being on the computer.
This is the last thing I do before I take 3 days off. So.
Oh, nice.
I know, which shouldn't sound as glorious as it does because it's just 3 days off. But you know, still, there it is.
I hope you're going somewhere that's out of cell signal.
Not completely, but enough.
I did that a week and a half ago. I went for 5 days to a place with an unreliable cell signal and Wi-Fi that you had to walk down the road to get to. So it was once a day I checked my email and I put my message to say, put urgent in the line and I'll scan it and see if it says urgent. Otherwise I'm not gonna. It was amazing.
A good way to do it. Yeah, in June, I'm gonna be remote, much more remote like that. So
yeah,
it will be, yeah.
We got to do it. We have to take care of ourselves.
Well, especially this last year where I just haven't been, everybody's just been connected in some way or another, right? We're all Zooming or whatever.
Yeah, there's no boundaries. No boundaries like, okay, I'm not available. Really? Are you really not available?
Right. What do you do? What could you possibly be doing that you're not available?
Absolutely. Well, let's, I think we have a good start at getting there, but we need a couple more people, right? We don't quite have a quorum. Hopefully.
We have quorum, but because Matt is not a voting member, we would have to wait to vote on the record of actions until later if you wanted to get started.
So I know that Melissa's not coming and I asked her if she could send a proxy and she said she could not. So nobody from the Sheriff's Department is coming, unfortunately. Okay. But I hadn't heard anything from Dr. Walker. Or from Lashante.
Well, while we wait, I'll just remind everyone that any place is remote enough if you use airplane mode when you
somehow my phone the other day got set to not airplane, but like where there's a little moon, like it won't unless you unlock it, it won't like. I don't know how it happened. My son probably did it when he was playing with my phone, but I left it that way for a while.
What, the do not disturb mode?
Right.
Okay.
I think that's what I don't even know how he did it. He must have hit some button when he was playing around. And here's Dr. Walker. Excellent.
Hello.
Hi. Good. Great. So I think we can go ahead and call the meeting to order. 3:02 according to my clock. And Nicole, do you want to take a roll call attendance here?
Sure. Becky.
Present.
Matthew.
Present.
Denise.
Present.
Dr. Walker.
Present.
Shayla.
Here.
And we want to do introductions with non-members. So we have Jill.
Hi there.
Hi, Jill.
And Cheryl.
Hello.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hola. And by the way, do not disturb and ignore the call. They're the same thing.
Bye, Scott. I'm not sure if you're a community member or staff to the county, but thank you for joining us.
Yeah, most of you, or a lot of you know me, Becky and Denise and Jill. I am one of the co-chairs for the Juvenile Justice Data and Services Subcommittee, so trying to just observe and hear what's happening over here.
Thanks for being here, Ryan.
Absolutely.
Great. And Christopher.
And myself, Nicole from ORJ.
Great. And Denise, did you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Great. Well, thank everyone. Thank you all for being here today. And I guess we should say, do we have any public comment about anything not on the agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the RJOB Data Subcommittee? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we can move to the next item, which is the approval of the record of action from March 25th, attachment 1, pages 3 and 4 on your agenda packet. And do I have any feedback or corrections that need to be made, or anybody looking to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the record of action, or to approve the record of action.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. And Nicole, you want to do a roll call vote?
Becky.
Approve.
Denise.
Approved.
Dr. Walker.
Approve.
Chala.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion carries. And Nicole, did you record all of the people there? Okay, great, thank you. And I just want to mention, I noticed on the record of action that we now have the link to the recording, which should be helpful to create it. You know, if people want to see more about what happened at the meeting, that should definitely help to make that happen. So nice to see that.
I try to post that on the county's website within a week after, so it goes up pretty before this meeting, next meeting for sure.
Thank you, Nicole. I think that's been a big improvement about transparency and making sure that people have access to what is happening if they can't attend.
Sorry, I should have said something before you voted on it, but I was present at that meeting and my name isn't on the others present. So if my name could just be added in there, Nicole.
Yeah.
I just wanted to check my calendar to make sure I was actually present.
Do we need to, and now since Jill is the expert about these things, do we need to make another vote or just say that's just a clerical correction?
It's just a clerical correction. It shouldn't, it's not that big of a deal.
Good. Glad you're here, and thank you for always helping us to make sure we're following all the requirements. Appreciate that. Okay, so I guess we can move to our, to the next agenda item, which is to discuss the data from the local justice system stakeholders. And the first sub point there is the probation department data. Denise, you were going to take that?
Yeah. As you'll notice on page 5 is the beginning of our probation data for juvenile intakes for the month of March. We had 20 intakes in March. The majority were youth of color, mostly men. If you scroll down, I'm not quite sure what the median age is here, but it looks to be somewhere around 16 or 17, as you can see, because there's a good number of older youth. The following page speaks to the intakes by arrest location, and that's very dispersed across the county, as well as intakes by arresting agency. Those two are dispersed throughout the county, as well as other areas such as the Santa Clara Probation Department and Solano Probation. I believe those are both transfers in. The next chart shows the number of intakes by the number of offenses. So there's pretty good distribution there. About a third had just one charge, but there were several, good number of youth that had multiple charges on this intake. And then what we can see in the following page is the distribution of the results of the matter. There were, over half were still pending. And 4 youth went to the ranch, 1 went to YOTP, 1 was transferred out of the county, 2 were on courtesy hold, and 1 youth had no charges filed. The average number of days between the disposition date and the date the youth entered the program was a week for the ranch and 1 day for YOTP. Are there any questions on that data in particular from from probation. This is the same charts I've been showing monthly now. So if there's anything specific, please let me know. Otherwise, the next
I had a
chart. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
And I apologize, but I'm sure I probably asked you this before. Just, I guess, looking for an update or a reminder at the least of what the answer is. Is there a hierarchy that is used within the county as far as most serious offense, such that these intakes could be categorized to some degree, or we could see some level of detail about what sort of offenses are resulting in youth coming into the system?
Yes, and that would be the next chart, which starts on page 8, which shows, I think this is addressing what you're interested in, Chris, which is for each youth, these are the arrest charges per youth, as well as the arrest description, the petition charges, and the petition description.
Right.
So, and then I have, just for ease, I have color coded. The PID is the individual probation ID. So if it's the same number, it's the same youth. So I've color coded those. So what you can see for the first 6 rows are all yellow, PID 1. Those are the 6 charges for that first youth. The second youth is item 2, and that individual had only 1 charge, courtesy hold, no petition filed. And then we have what is another 6 charges for youth number 3. And then we have a bunch of charges filed for youth 4, and I've color coded them so that you can see all the way through.
Denise, I have a question about that. So like,
yes.
If we look at youth number 3, for example,
yes.
In the petition charge and the petition description columns, it says no petition filed for any of them. Does that just means that it's still pending, that there's somebody who has not had a petition filed, or that they're not pursuing filing a petition?
You know, that's a really good question. Because
I imagine normally
I think it can take a while too.
Right, but you would expect to see if it was if the matter was completed, I would imagine you would expect to see at least 1 petition filed. Otherwise, if they weren't going to file on anything, then they would release the student, right?
Right, and we have 1 no petition filed. I'm just going back up to the.
Well, like so for number 1,
only 1. Right.
For youth number 1, you can see that on that there were whatever 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Petition charges, but only a petition was filed for 3 of them, correct?
Right, yes, yes. And that's, I honestly don't know the answer to that, Becky. I will have to follow up with that, but it would seem that it's possible that it's still pending.
Right, and so if that's the case, then I think that we would want to put pending there instead of no petition filed. If that's
and I thought we had talked about that last time. But I'll follow up. I'll follow up on that.
That would be helpful. Because I know definitely sometimes there are multiple charges at arrest, but they're not all followed through.
Right. And,
That's
you know, I see the same thing with youth number 12 too, that there's no petition filed for any of the charges.
Mm-hmm. And it might just be that maybe they got there like the day before.
Right.
You know,
right.
the end of the month or whatever, because we're doing this on a monthly basis.
Right. Yeah, I thought I had asked about that, but it's very possible that it got overlooked, and certainly it got overlooked by me this month. So I will follow up and prepare an updated one for next month.
And then I'm just wondering, like, is there any way to, like, as we move forward, trace this through to when there is the dispositional hearing, what the actual disposition is based upon the You know what I'm saying? Like that would be the next point in our movement along the system, would be not just the petitions that are filed, but the outcome of the disposition.
Right. And I don't know if we have that data or not.
Well, I think it would be hard to reconstruct it in the past, but I'm just wondering if, like,
right,
moving forward, if maybe we can take, and I don't know how quickly this happens, so I'm not sure if this is a realistic idea, but like you could maybe take the next month, take the last month's one and then update it with another column. I'm just thinking out loud. I have no idea if that fits with the actual time of when these things happen, but.
This month, and then what you're looking for is the disposition. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if it happens that quickly.
I think there is a timeline that they have to have the hearing within.
Right, for the youth. Yeah, right.
Within, I want to say 20 days, but I'm not sure. So I don't know if it would be.
Now, do you know about what the requirements are for that?
I'm sorry, to me?
Yeah. Do you know what the requirements are for there to be a disposition or a petition charge and a disposition?
Not necessarily. Okay. No, not offhand. Sorry.
Okay. It's the one that they have to have within 20 days or whatever it is not, that's the detention hearing, not the disposition. Definitely, it's way longer now that I think about it, because of course there are people who.
They're awaiting trial.
It can go for a really long time. So maybe that's not realistic but maybe some way to try to, maybe as we move forward, thinking about like even on an annual basis, look at the, or something like that. Something realistic, but like trying to connect the dots between viewing, because this is like so much, like, I don't think we could ask for anything more about this set of data. Like this is everything that we could, anything else I think would violate people's privacy, to be honest. Like we couldn't relate it to the zip code or anything like that. I personally feel like that would be too much identifying information. But if there would be a way to like make it a aggregate and connect it to the outcomes, totally not like in an annual basis, that would be something we could consider, I suppose.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out about that.
Cool. Okay, so I think that's the end of your section. Is there any comments or questions from the panel?
Yeah, I have one. I'll just throw out there that from the Burns Institute perspective, we would be happy to help with some of the analysis of this data. It's a lot to ask of any one person. And what we might be able to do, right, is take essentially what is raw data in terms of these charges and quantify it for you guys so that you have some sense of the numbers of admissions for any particular charge, to the extent that can make sense. There are a number of charges, so it could get a little difficult, but trying to on some level just sort of give people a sense of the frequency, because again, that could give you some sense of what sorts of programs or interventions you may want to develop, right? If we know that we're having a lot of youth come in for, let's see. So just looking off the top of my head, obviously it's not the most serious offense, but, say leaving residence without permission, right? Like if that's happening a ton, then that would be something that maybe we want to look further into and figure out how exactly to develop something to create in response to that occurrence, right? Or anything else where there's room, where there's agreement, right? That something else potentially could be done besides an arrest. And so just looking to quantify what those charges are looking like, or the extent to which it's a good number, a significant number of youth coming in on any particular thing, so that we get a sense of where and how to prioritize.
And yeah, thank you so much for that offer. That's amazing, Christopher. And I'm just thinking, like, for that one, that is, I'm guessing it's somebody who was probably on ankle monitoring, and that's a violation, like a status offense that they normally, we don't have people coming into juvenile hall for missing school and leaving their residence. So it would be that the other things that are associated with that possession of a rifle and a concealed firearm. Those are the, you know what I'm saying? So but yeah, like but what I'm interested to see too is like, how do we, like what is actually getting carried through all the way, because they're mentioning everything, right? When the rest is happening, but then eventually I think they kind of focus on, like, they're not gonna take that. If it was just those bottom three, they wouldn't be there. I'm guessing, I'm thinking. Anyone else? Thank you for the offer of help. And I think that would be amazing. And I think it's doable. I do think it's doable to do that. Anyone else have any comments or questions about the data so far that has been presented? Anyone from the public have any questions or comments about the data? Okay, we can move to the next bullet under 4, which is the data that the county office has provided. And I was able, this is on page, which page is it on? Page 14, to get the composite information about the English language learner status and special ed status of the students who were admitted in the past 3 months. So now caught up with the information that probation has provided. And in January, you can see where we had 15, and of course, I'll just mention it because I know I've mentioned it before, but not in this meeting, that this data might not match exactly with the data that probation provides, because if they were not there during a school day, they did not enroll in school. So if somebody was brought in on the weekend and discharged, then their data might not match exactly, because we only have people who are there during a school day. So in January, of the 15 students who were admitted, 9 of them, or 60%, had a special education, individualized education plan. And 5 of them, or 33%, were English language learners. And then in February, with the 12 intakes that we had in the school department there, 4 of them, or 33%, had an IEP, and only 1 of them, or 8%, were English language learners. And then in March, we had 21 intakes that enrolled in school, and 8 individuals, or 38%, had an IEP, and 1 of them had a 504 plan, and then only 1 of those students was an English language learner. So that's that information. Any questions?
Becky, can you remind me what a 504 plan is?
Yeah, absolutely. So a 504 plan is an accommodation plan that a student might have if they have like a medical issue or something else that impacts their general functioning in school and across different life areas. So a common example of why somebody might have a 504 plan would be like ADHD, or even if they have like diabetes, or they have like specialized needs that they need accommodations for school. But it differs than an individualized education plan, because in an individualized education plan, they also have goals and might need modifications. But for a 504, it's more just normally some sort of accommodation. So like they might have to be able to eat in class, or to, you know, whatever, be able to take a walk whenever they want, something that is more minor normally, but still it's covered. Yeah, go ahead, Jill. So you have your hand up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, having personal experience with this, if IEP has teeth, a 504 has none. So the school doesn't necessarily have to comply with the 504, but they do have to comply with the IEP to the best of their ability. One question that I have, and this has been my super interesting point here since I first heard about this, and that's the special education status. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I recognize that some of these youth are not with you very long. So I'm guessing that these numbers mean that they came in with either an IEP or 504, and that there hasn't been time to evaluate or assess whether or not there are special education needs amongst these youth, which is my question, since a large percentage of our youth that hit the system do have special education needs.
So this information that's provided right here would be about their status upon intake, because this is within the month that they're there. So whenever you have an evaluation for special education, there's a 60-day timeline between when the assessment plan is signed by the parent and when the assessment will be completed. So yeah, it wouldn't capture anybody who was newly assessed, but we do that with long-term students. We absolutely do pursue new assessments when we feel that a student has special needs that haven't been identified previously. Yes.
So to follow on that, I'd be super curious to find out what the rate of those children are who have not been previously assessed that turn out. You know, what's the percentage of kids who are identified once they hit our system as having special needs or special education needs that were missed previously?
Yeah, there are some. I think, you know, sometimes one of the issues that has come up in the past is that in order to qualify a student for special education, they have to be enrolled in school and attending school, because otherwise it's difficult to sort out whether their lack of progress is related to a learning disability or one of the 13 categories that they can qualify for, or whether it's because of their lack of attendance. So we have had cases where students have come to our school and it's been like, how did this person not get assessed before? But often that's the reason why. And I think we do a really good job of making sure that we follow through with that. And in fact, we have a meeting once every month where we review all the behavioral and academic data for all the students, and any staff member from the school department or probation can actually suggest that we intervene in that way and have either a student study team meeting or evaluation to move forward with an evaluation. Normally we start with a student study team meeting just to see if there's something that people are missing that could be done. But we have a lot of procedures in place to make sure that we are addressing those needs. And we also have, every single class has special education support pretty much all day long. And so we are providing support. We're not, of course, we're making sure first that we target the students who have the stated needs, but we're also, every class has, at this point, 12 or fewer students, and we have a special education staff as well as the general ed teacher, so.
Well, and I would just add to that I have absolutely no doubt that these students are getting exactly what they need once they hit your system, which is unfortunate. The other thing that I want to add in there that some people may not know, that I'm actually a newbie at learning in the last couple of years, is that mental health can be a reason to have an IEP. And a lot of times those kids get missed because they can be highly intelligent and yet fail out the system because they just can't focus on their studies because of their mental health. And it could be as it relates to trauma or otherwise. So I would argue that probably a very large majority of these kids would qualify along the mental health lines for an IEP.
Yeah, and then, we also, there are a lot of guidelines I see that Emily put in the chat that she, that of course we have to seek parental consent in order to evaluate, and we follow all of those guidelines. And so when we would have that initial meeting to consider whether we would want to consider evaluating somebody, the next step would be to put together an assessment plan and to present it to the parents. So yes, we're not skipping that step, Emily, but very, very important step. Here in California, we have a lot of parent involvement in our special education process, which is wonderful. So we still do that, even though they're not in the custody of their parents. When we do, the parents are retaining the educational rights, even though they're not the physical guardians of the students. And about your question or comment, Jill, about emotional disturbance, that is one of the qualifying categories. And we certainly have had students come in with that. And we do, we have a school psychologist in addition to behavioral health, probation and medical, everybody works all together, but we do provide counseling related to IEPs for our students through our school psychologists who we employ.
And then one last data point that I, might be helpful going forward with these youth is to determine if there are a good percentage of youth who are missed in the public school system, because by the time they reach here, they've been through how many years of school in the public education system?
At least 6.
Right. Is to then, and probably more, is to then identify maybe which school districts they're coming from. That is to see if there's a preponderant, a larger group coming from any one school district that are getting missed, because then maybe there needs to be a closer look at how that school district is assessing their students to avert this from hitting the point that it's hit.
Yeah, And one thing that is definitely, you know, connected to the purpose of this body is that there are also rules about if a school district identifies more than a certain percentage of students of color as having special needs, there's a whole process that the school district will have to go through in order to identify why they are disproportionately identifying students. And so sometimes I think in certain areas that can be a disincentive for early intervention and providing services, because they don't want to be hit with a disproportionality root cause analysis, even if they're just trying to meet the needs of the students who are there, because it's assuming that everyone has a similar level of trauma and a similar level of, you know, it's kind of like a flat tax, like everyone should have 12% regardless of whether, you know, and it's not quite that simple, so. But yes, I know what you're saying. And definitely, I think that we do, especially in our work through the Special Education Learning Plan area, the SELPA, they serve multiple school districts. And so the Contra Costa SELPA is involved in supporting all the different school districts that, and then Mount Diablo and San Ramon have their own one, just to make things nice and complicated. But most of the school districts and the county office belong to the Contra Costa SELPA. Okay, let's see, was there, oh, Chala, I see that you, I was going to, okay, yeah. And I was just gonna say that we do, I mean, we fully comply with 504 plans too. They're like a federal requirement. You know, IDEA, and there's a lot of regulations that are both state and federal regarding all of this. So, okay, any other comments or thoughts about this sheet?
I do.
Yes, Ms. Cheryl.
And I know it's probably out of habit that most of you are saying this, but we keep saying this thing about students of color, but when I'm looking at these chart, I'm not seeing students of color, I'm seeing Black students. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the overwhelming number of students who are depicted on this form as Black students who are being arrested, who are in the system, and as Ms. Jill just pointed out, who need services. So I'm just one of those people who call a thing a thing. And so we need to be looking at this from that lens and from that eye. This is one of the reasons we're on this oversight body. It's one of the reasons we're supposed to be looking at these gaps and finding out what is going on. I like the comments Ms. Jill just made about looking at what schools they are affiliated with, what areas they're affiliated with, and what are we doing or what are we not doing? That this is such an overwhelming number of these juveniles. 60% are Black and 25% are Latino, and 95% are male. So overwhelmingly Black male.
Yeah, you know, and Cheryl, I can actually provide that information. I will put it on the next agenda because I have it like in terms of an annual summary to show the percentage of each ethnic racial group, their special ed percentage, and then also that disaggregated by school district. So I can bring that here.
But even just that word, every time I hear that word, I'm just telling you, it cuts me to my core that we keep tagging these, and I'm gonna say young men because overwhelmingly that's what I see here is special ed. When I'm going to go back to what Ms. Jill said, are they special ed or are they trauma influenced young men? So sometimes, you know, when I look at them and I'm listening, and I just want to give you guys an example. Anytime we have young men, for instance, who can memorize numbers, who can play video games without even thinking, who can play sports and memorize plays, an entire playbook, are they special ed? If you can take that type of power and put it into math and science, is it special ed? Or is it that they've been so traumatized by what's happening in their communities that we haven't dealt with that trauma, we haven't dealt with that mental illness? So I think that Some of this is the language that you're using, and some of this is that we've already tagged them in such a way that we haven't even begun to deal with the issues, the underlying issues. So I'm going to go back to what Ms. Jill said. Are we tagging them way too early and not giving them what they need? So this data is great, but what are we going to do with it? Are we going to use this data to offer them the type of services that they need so that we're not continuously seeing this type of categorization of these men, and we're not giving them services that they really need? I personally, and I'm going to take these back to the Diversion Committee and also to the community engagement committees. And what's the solution we're going to get out of this other than tagging another whole group of Black and brown children, which make up the vast majority of these, and 60 and 20, 85% of these as children who can't learn or have problems learning? Is that it? Chicken and egg syndrome.
Well, and I just wanted to clarify because having been through this, Cheryl, so special ed involves support services, which could be mental health supports. And that's the benefit of having a mental health diagnosis with the IEP, is it's mandated that the school district provide those supports. It doesn't necessarily mean learning disabilities, because a child can have a IEP through mental health needs, but not have any learning disabilities whatsoever. So it's the services needed to support that child to be successful in school that's offered with the IEP.
I get that, but I'm getting that I think it needs to happen way before we even come into this system, is what I'm looking at.
Well, I definitely want to respond to what you said, Ms. Cheryl, because I do think that there's been a large shift in the past couple of years towards what they call MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support. And our school in Juvenile Hall, as well as many of the schools across the county, are engaged in trying to identify sort of like 3 tiers. The first tier being what's available to everybody. How can we support everybody? Everybody needs supports in different ways. So what is universally available? And then what can be provided, you know, by small group instruction or specialized supports that maybe get pushed into the classrooms, or different services that can be provided. And then the tertiary, or like the most extreme support that's needed, and trying to make sure that it's robust at every level. And so we're not just automatically shunting people out of the classroom and into specialized services that remove them from the core curriculum, because that is definitely something that, you know, education got good at a certain point. Like, oh, let's just take everyone who's not doing well and stick them far away from everybody else who is doing well. Well, that's not helpful for people either, right? Because then they're not following along. They're not being exposed to the grade level curriculum. So all of the school districts in our county and our county office have been engaged in trying to make sure that we have robust supports and services available within the classroom, so that we're not just labeling people and pulling them out of the general ed curriculum. So I just want to mention that, because, and that's something that if there was interest, I could certainly ask the school principal to put something together, because they have built a large matrix explaining all the different supports and services that they're doing at every level, and for everything too. So like for emotional health and for behavioral health and for academic health. So it's not just limited to one of those areas, but definitely I think supporting the idea of providing robust services in the least restrictive environment possible. And so not having to pull people out or separate them. Okay, any other comment from the panel or from the public about page 14? Okay, if not, we'll move on to page 15, which has a lot of information on it as well. So I'm currently in the process of working with the local school districts to develop our, every 3 years we have to update our countywide expulsion plan. And as part of that, I pulled together some data, and there's a lot of data that's available. I put the link is in at the bottom of the page. And actually, even after I put this together, I started digging and looking some more at different things after I was looking at it, but I didn't get it into the packet, so I might need to include that next time. But just to review in general, the top part, the top table shows the cumulative enrollment of each of the different ethnic groups that are listed here for our state, and then also for our county. So within the state, there are 301 49,651 African-American high school students enrolled. And within Contra Costa, that number is 5,897. Out of that group of people, the next column overlists the total number of expulsions for that group. And so within Contra Costa, there were 11 school expulsions within that group. And then out of that, I generated a rate based on the number of expulsions per 10,000 students. And so as you can see there, our rate of expulsion for African-American students is slightly less than the statewide rate. And the next rows below are for our Latino students, and our rate is slightly above. You can also compare because they're controlled for the number of students. And you can see that our expulsion rate for African-American students is almost twice that of what it is for Latino students. And then in the third set of rows below is for our white students. And you see that our expulsion rate in Contra Costa is more, 9 students per 10,000, based on the state is 6 per 10,000. So that provides some composite data about the school expulsion. But down below, I also dug in and created a similar sort of rate based on the different expulsion offense categories. And I think it shows something quite a lot here. And these are the different categories. We have violent incident with injury, violent incident with no injury, weapon possession, illicit drug related, defiance, other reason, and then the total, it matches what's in the column above. So if you look and you break down those expulsions by cause, you'll see that the majority of expulsions for African-American students, both in the state and for our county, is in the violent incident with injury area. And then if you look for the Latino students, you'll see that their highest area in the state is actually illicit drug related. But in our county, it's violent incident with no injury. And for our white students, both in the state and also in our county, the highest rate is for illicit drug related. But what stood out to me the most when I looked at this is that the disproportionality in the first column of violent incident with injury. And I did the math 4 times to make sure that I was doing it properly. Yeah. Because what it shows is that in the state, African-American students are a little bit more than 8 times more likely to be expelled for a violent incident with injury. And in our county, in fact, that disproportionality is 20 times. So a Black student is 20 times more likely to be expelled for that offense category than a white student. After I did this, I was able to go in and I found out that you could actually further drill down to look by school district and actually by school. Ooh. Yeah. So, and also by gender and by age range. I also looked at the 7th and 8th grade students, because there are some 7th and 8th grade students who were expelled as well. And I expected anecdotally for that to really strongly favor boys, but it was not as weighted as far in that regard as I thought it was. So I can bring back that more detailed information, but I wonder if there's any conversation right now about what's on this page right now. The next page shows the raw numbers if you're interested in that too. I just mentioned, sorry.
I'm sorry. Where did the 20 times come in again? Like which? Right.
So if you look at the rate per 10,000 students in the first column on the bottom chart, you'll see that in Contra Costa, white students, 0.53 students per 10,000, okay. Compared to 10.17 per 10,000, which is 20 times.
Right. I'm with you.
This is great data, Becky.
Yeah, well, I don't like what it says, but thank you.
No, I don't know, but yeah, I don't either.
So in creating this plan, I should say that each school district is charged with kind of indicating what are their strategies for lessening the use of expulsion, as well as to trying to avoid disproportionality in their numbers. And so as we're developing that plan, which is being finalized, and it will be finalized before, I believe, before the next meeting, or maybe the one after that, I should say, because it has to go to every individual school board. I can bring that back.
I guess what I would ask is that obviously even in the category of violent incident with injury, there's a whole interpretation of what an injury is, right?
And second, made me think too, yes.
And second, what are the alternative responses other than expulsion that are available to schools and school districts to deal with these issues?
Yeah, it's hard because there are certain categories for which it is mandatory that the school administrator recommend, for expulsion. There are certain things that are required, like a weapon on campus, or there are different things that are required. But the first thing it made me think, the same as what you said, Dr. Walker, which is that I would like to review what falls into those, especially those two categories, violent incident injury and violent incident no injury, and compare if we are using the same category. Because in the grand scheme of things, when a student is being expelled, probably the last thing that the family or the student are thinking about is the code that's written there. It's about the larger outcome. And so I do think that we could do some work to make sure that we are having proper inter-rater reliability about what falls into what category. So I definitely think there's work to be done. And like I said, this is a plan that is updated every 3 years. And so this is the first time that I've been in charge of updating it. And so I'm already making plans for the next 3 years. Let me just say that. But right now it's a summative plan about the last 3 years.
Well, it's really good data to try to target what we could do about it, or what anybody could do about it. Particularly when you break it out the way you have in terms of incidents per 10,000, because then you can actually compare rather than raw numbers. So.
Yeah, it's really hard to look at those numbers and get any sense because the amount of population is so different.
Right.
But if we could eliminate that whole category, that would go very far too. Because the other categories, there is some disproportionality, but nowhere in no other category is it anywhere near.
Right.
And I just have a question about the practices that have changed in expulsion. Just I graduated in '99, and I've seen people expelled. Let's just say 2 people get in a fight, one person started it, and they expel the person who didn't start the fight because they felt it would cause more problems for the student, antagonizing the person who did start the fight if the other person didn't get expelled. So just kind of getting an understanding of the practices.
Yeah, I mean, the overall trend, that's a really good point, Nicole, but the overall trend is away from expulsion. And to build on what Dr. Walker was saying earlier too, I used to work in San Mateo County. And in San Mateo County, there's one school district that has a really strong, it's South San Francisco School District. They have a very strong diversion program for school expulsion, where they enroll the student and the family in a 5-day intensive, I can't remember what they call it, like an academy or something like that, where basically they expose them to a lot of different things. They take them to like an alcohol and drug rehabilitation center. They take them to the morgue. They have like a whole kind of like, a whole menu of different things that they do that kind of like give them some perspective about some of these issues. That's, I guess, the intention. But anyways, using that program, they very rarely, and then they would stipulate, if they participated in that, they would stipulate the expulsion and enroll the student in a different comprehensive high school. So, which means that they would basically suspend the enforcement of the suspension, of the expulsion, and they would be able to attend a regular high school. They'd have to change schools because, you can't have pull a weapon on somebody and then go back to the same class the next day, right? So they'd go to a different school. But within the district, a regular comprehensive high school. And then as long as they met the terms of the stipulated expulsion, they would be allowed to just remain in a comprehensive high school. So they very rarely referred students to our community school. It was only if they had not been successful at all of their comprehensive high schools, basically. So there is a model of something that can be done, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I think I got suspension mixed up with expulsion. That makes sense.
Well, that's a whole nother ball of wax, because this is just expulsion, and the suspension, while suspension is also down, I would say that it's not down as much as expulsion. And there's a lot in there too. And that data is also available on this website, and I could put some of that together too. But this, you know, I mean, I think it is related to what we're doing here, because that is, you know, the first kind of entry into the system for a lot of people is, you know, school expulsion. And that starts before with school suspension. And so any kind of exclusionary discipline.
One question that I have, and I've heard this, and I don't know how true it is that, you know, some of these rules are district by district. So where in one rule, there might be a zero tolerance if some student has a knife in their backpack. Another school district might not treat it the same way. And is that the case, or is there an overriding law?
There is like the mandatory recommendation for expulsion. So there are certain things, no matter where you are, that have to fall into that. But I believe that governing boards can set their own policy that is more restrictive than what the state standards are. But that's a really good thing to look into. Also, I haven't in this county looked at each school because we have 18. Also, it's a little challenging to review their policies. But that would be a really good line of inquiry, I think.
Well, and I think, you know, rather than trying to look at all 18, look at the ones with the highest expulsion rates and determine what the differences is in their rules.
Yeah. And like I said, you can drill all the way down to the school. And so basically all of these expulsions, I think it was, when I looked at it, I don't want to misspeak, but I want to say it was like 8 or 10 schools that these occurred at across the county.
Yeah.
So that does give you some, I mean, and I know Rye's on this call, thinking of the JJCC and things that we might be able to put in place through there, and to, you know, that might look different if every one of those sites had a restorative justice coach that was on site and able to provide, you know, alternatives to suspension and expulsion. Okay, any other questions or comments about this data?
Yeah, I had one, and I think it might be related to the next pages as well. Could you, I know it's a relatively small, much smaller category, but could you give us some idea of what examples of other reasons for expulsion might look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't actually know without going into the file, but I can think of one that I'm aware of where there, because I supervise the community school, so I actually, you know, I see the referrals that come that way. One that I can think of is where a student was expelled for sexual harassment and was sending explicit sexual videos to many different female students in the school over a period of time.
Gotcha.
But you will notice that the defiance only is definitely almost non-existent. And if you look back a couple of years, you'd see that sometimes kids were being expelled for just purely defiance. And now you can't even, with a high school student, you cannot even, well, I guess with the high school you still can, but for the elementary students, you cannot suspend them for defiance only. And it's not a strong practice to suspend them for defiance only. Okay, anything else on that? Unfortunately, the next item that we have has to do with the sheriff's office, and they are not present here today. But I think we can have a conversation about this a little bit, about the request that's been made about the ARIES data. So Denise, do you want to just talk a little bit about what you guys, what I guess Christopher, you and actually Cheryl, who's here, were the ones who went to the police chiefs. We talked about it a little bit last time, and Denise, you were there as well, right?
Yeah.
But just where we're at with that, and
yeah, this came forward for me when thinking about the update that we received from Melissa, that there was really no update from the sheriff's office surrounding obtaining data. And I started thinking about it further, and I recalled that when John presented this to us, he had said that the sheriff's office had agreed to share this, but that he wanted to get approval from other law enforcement agencies before he did it. And when I was reflecting on how it got presented and the sheriff's or the undersheriff's comments at the meeting, I realized it seemed a little bit like a bait and switch. And I'm kind of saying that here because I would have expected it to be, if you have any trouble with this or any concerns, I think this is a great thing to do. I want to share your data. Please let me know if you do not want me to. So opt out instead of opt in. And what ended up happening was that it turned out to be an opt in from the perspective that the undersheriff said, if you want me to share your data with you, then you need to send me a letter, as opposed to sending me an email to exclude me. And so I think that sends a very different message to law enforcement. And I was under the impression that John had laid it out that way. And I don't know if anybody else has the same kind of recollections that I do, but what I was hoping with this is that we could go back to Melissa and ask her if we could obtain the sheriff's support again for an opt-out message, and for there to be maybe a follow-up email to everybody to say, I'm in support of this. Let me know if you do not want me to share your data. Otherwise, as of May 1st, I'm going to, kind of thing. That's where I was headed. I don't know, Chris, what do you think? You were there.
Yeah, I'm in support of that. I think that hopefully, I think that could make a difference. You know, I mean, the distinction certainly is not lost on me. So, I mean, I think that would be a good, at least first step in terms of trying to follow up with where we are on that data request.
Yeah. Because I would see with where we left it, that she doesn't have anything to an update for us this month. She made that clear, and we're never going to get an update, right? Because no one's going to say, and how are we going to follow up? And so I think if we turn it on its head, make the request to turn it on its head, and have that followed through with some other kind of process, that we might stand, well, it's an opportunity.
I think that there's an opportunity as we move into when we have the quarterly meeting of the body to bring back in our report, you know, I can kind of, I mean, it's set, and I know this is agendized a little bit later, but looking at the work plan and what we're supposed to be doing, one of the things that it says in the work plan, which is in the packet, is that we should, on page 21, in an effort to create greater transparency and accountability of county criminal justice and law enforcement agency, the Office of Reentry and Justice shall publish data related to the demographic, criminal justice, law enforcement, education patterns present within the county by race and ethnicity. Oh, that wasn't the part, sorry. There's a part where it says that we should basically positively promote those agencies which are complying, and then also call out people who are not complying. That wasn't the right, cite the right place, but Jill, you have your hand up.
Okay, so there's another way around this. Many of our communities have created, they all call them something different, but like diversity task forces. And every police chief works for a city council, city manager. The mayor's conference gathers together. They the 19 cities, the leaders of the 19 cities every month in a different part of the county, it might be a good opportunity to go to there and ask for this data to address racial diversity, racial equity, social justice, since many of our cities are doing that anyway, and have them direct their police chiefs to provide that information to this group.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
That's a great idea.
Because those people obviously are publicly elected and they, you know, report to that, because that's what's missing with the police chiefs, right? Is that they're not.
And I've had these conversations with police chiefs in District 2, and they're fine sharing the information. So yeah, it's not a matter of them not wanting to. In fact, the police chief in Lafayette, I had a long conversation about the information they collect and how it's impossible to, you know, determine certain things. And he was all on board with collecting more information.
Yeah, so sometimes I think that we just have to, I appreciate, Jill, you sharing your savviness about the way in which this is all connected, because, you know, I just work for the school department over here. But that makes a lot of sense to me. How do people feel about that?
I agree. And I guess the other organization is the city managers group as well. So either way.
I think it's an and. I don't think it's an or. I think it's both. Yeah. That's what we did when we talked about crisis response. We did that. Went to both city managers and the mayor's conference to get that ball rolling.
And so when we did, you know, when Ms. Cheryl and Ms. Denise and Mr. Chris went to the police chiefs, how did we get invited to that table? What was the process?
Boy, didn't we have a discussion about it and ask Bisa if she could get us on the agenda?
I think that's right.
At the time, John, I think there was a transition from John Loudon to Bisa on there. And so John was part of the conversation to start with. And then Bisa, you know, since she's part of this group, absolutely supported it and arranged for that.
Jill, do you know how we would go about getting on the agenda of the mayor's group or the city managers?
Yeah, let me talk to my boss about that. Monica Nino, our county administrator, would be a step into the city managers, since she would be meeting with them. So let me talk to my boss and she can run it up the flagpole to Monica Nino. And then the mayor's conference, let me find out who's organizing that, to find out how to get on that one. I'll talk to my boss.
I think it really makes sense to do it that way, because I think you're right, Jill, that like perhaps just having it be a clear direction. I think that, you know, the chain of command is big in the law enforcement world. And if they were directed to do something, I'm sure they would be happy to comply, but it's just doing things electively. I also have I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll ask Gabe Canto. He's the immediate past chair of the mayor's conference. I'll ask him about getting on the agenda for there. I go to the mayor's conference every month.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
To get on the agenda. Yeah.
And there is the mayor's conference, and then there's the West County Mayor's Conference too. So there's two.
Yeah, I go to both. Yeah, I go to both.
Oh, good.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. I lost what I was going to say.
While you're thinking on that, Jill, let me ask you another question about Lafayette Police Chief. Would he be willing to, I'm assuming that it's a man, I'm sorry for that assumption, but would he be willing to send a letter to Mike Kasten saying, please authorize?
So you have to understand, Lafayette is a contract city with the sheriff. Right. So you are dealing with the chain of command when you're dealing with the 5 contract cities versus going to their city council and having them direct their police chief to do it.
Right. Got it.
I know what I was going to say. Thank you. That was a good
okay.
Transition. When we were in the JJCC meeting, I'm blanking on his name, the man from the sheriff's department, Brian Vanderland.
Brian
Vanderland. He seemed very knowledgeable about the way in which things are collected, because I know that one thing that we have heard different things about is about the ability to query the Aries system to actually run a report. Because I remember that when John was here, he said that it didn't actually work that way, and they weren't actually able to create it. They were entering data, but they were not able to actually create a query that would produce a report that could be shared. So I just want to make sure that we're not putting a lot of energy into getting something that actually won't help us, if that makes any sense. Because if they can't actually create a report, then it's going to be. But what Brian was talking about was that for the RIPA data, now, and see, this is my ignorance. I don't know if that is the same sort of data that we need. Is the RIPA data the same thing that we need or not? Anybody know?
Well, the RIPA data is going to be the self-identified from law enforcement stops. So what thing that I learned from Brian is that it's not everything.
Right.
So you get dispatched. You get dispatched, doesn't show up in RIPA.
Exactly. I learned that from too. I didn't.
My thing was, I thought we were going to get everything from law enforcement, which was all contacts.
Yeah, because I asked him, I asked Brian, like, so how is that RIPA data being collected? And he said that they actually have a separate icon that for every self-initiated stop, they have to actually either, in the car or back in the office, they have to go into a separate database and enter something separately. And that's what generates that RIPA data. So they're not getting that by querying Aries, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I think we need
and I remember the same thing that you do, Becky, because I remember initially John said that Aries data wasn't going to work. I probably have notes on that it wasn't going to provide us what we wanted. And then all of a sudden, like, Aries data is going to provide us what we want. And is that because we're going to put people on it in order to extract it? Now, whereas before we didn't have the people, so we didn't have the data. I'm not quite sure about what that was going to look like.
So if I could just jump in real quick. So the difference between the two. So the original question was, okay, great. We have all these calls to service that shows racial makeup, right? But a 911 call mandates that a police officer respond. So if you really want to look at diversity and who's doing what and whether or not people are being targeted, you have to look at the actual service provided by somebody that's initiated by that person. In other words, not responding to a 911 call, because that just talks about what's happening in the community, not whether or not there's racial bias in the actual officer making the stop.
Of course, that makes perfect sense, Jill.
Makes sense. But I guess maybe both things are actually interesting, right? Because we are actually interested. Like if you compare it to what the data that we're getting for the juveniles, we're looking at the actual intakes, right? So that the sheriff's department should be able to provide separately from the police departments, because they run all of the incarcerated settings, right? So they should be able to provide in the same way that probation provides the intakes. So maybe that data coupled with the RIPA data would show the self-initiated stops and then also the overall picture of the incarcerated population. Is that making sense? No is an okay answer because I'm just trying to figure this out.
So what I hear you saying is that we would have a comparison between all the arrests that are brought into the jails. And
two different things. One is like, what is the overall incarcerated population, right? That's different than looking at profiling and bias in self-initiated stops. But I think I was saying that I think that perhaps they're both something that we should be interested in. But feel free to disagree with me.
There's also, sorry to chime in, I think there's also a differential in outcomes. Like even when a call is initiated by the community, if it results in a different outcome because the community members that the police, that law enforcement is interacting with are people of color or Black or Latinx people versus white, you might see differential outcomes. And I think that is another way to potentially measure systemic bias.
Yeah, that's an even wider net, right? If you were to, I was trying to think about because if every municipality every agency is going to have to be doing the RIPA data sometime. That is something that they're going to have to do. It's not right now, but there's nothing that says that they can't do it ahead of time, right? So like the sheriff's, so that is something that they already have to collect. And then the sheriff's department is in control of the information about the actual intake. So I was just trying to think about because the other thing, Ryan, like what you were just saying, means we would have to get contact data for every municipality above and beyond what the RIPA data is. I see you thinking, Chris. What are you thinking? I'm just trying to get clear because I feel like that if we're going to ask them for something, we want to ask for what we want.
Yeah, I was just nodding my head in agreement with that, right? Like, ideally, we would love to get that level of information, but if we're struggling with, can you give us who comes into your system on a regular basis? Then like that level of detail, while it would be great, at least to start with, maybe not the most likely data to receive right now.
Because ostensibly the sheriff department could be giving us what probation is giving us right now without anybody doing anything besides them, right? They don't need the referring agency's permission to give us information about their intakes.
About the bookings? Yeah, I don't think so. But I think...
like in the same way that probation is what I'm saying, because those people are brought in by law enforcement too, but they didn't have to get law enforcement's permission to share that.
They do not need law. That's stuff. I've seen that before. I've seen it published before.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that might be a more manageable ask, to ask for people to give us their RIPA data as soon as they can. How long is it until everybody is required? Is it a year or 2 years?
I think the smallest communities are not required to start until 2023.
Well, that is in a way right around the corner, 18 months from now, right?
Right.
So they've got to get going with it.
Right.
How can 2023 be right around the corner? That seems scary.
But would it be possible to ask, would it be useful to ask for just the sheriff's office bookings data?
I think it would be, because that would be all in a certain way also that's comparable to what we're looking at for juveniles.
We wouldn't know if it's self-initiated or not, but we would know, disparities by arresting charge.
Well, and it would at least give you a picture. It would give you a picture, a snapshot of what the outcome is at that point.
Exactly.
Guys, let me ask a question, because I
Please, Cheryl.
I'm fasting. It's Ramadan, and I'm doing my best to hold on over here, but I'm just not understanding why we're struggling with just flat out asking them, and why are we tiptoeing about asking them for information. We are at a point in this country right now where, many of us have reached our apex with why law enforcement is continuing to struggle with treating people with Black and brown hue, giving people their full humanity. And we are struggling with asking why you can't tell us why people are being arrested and when and where. Why we can't just ask the question? If they say no, they say no. And then when they say no, we report to the public that they say they can't give us the information about why people are being arrested. The public wants to know who you've arrested and why. And I don't understand why that's hard to ask and why it's hard for them to give it to us. Yeah. We didn't ask you where people live. We didn't ask you who they're married to. We just asked you to give us who you're arresting and why. And I don't understand why we're struggling with asking that question. Plain and simple. When we were at that sheriff's meeting, we asked them for that information and they said they will figure out how to give it to us. They can run and jump as many hoops as they want to on, well, I don't have to do it to 2023. I beg to differ. The public right now is getting very demanding about wanting to know this information. Yeah. And so we are charged with, is the oversight body of getting this information and figuring out these disparities and how we can narrow them. And this committee is charged with getting this and giving them to the other two committees so that we can figure out how to reduce them. And so, yeah, I'm struggling with why we are struggling with asking for the information. Let's ask for it. Just ask for it, plain and simple. Yes, it's a good idea to ask the mayors and everybody else to ask for it, but no, we as the public have a right to know, and we should be asking because we are paying their salaries. We are the ones who they're supposed to protect. We are the ones that they're killing our sons and daughters and fathers and uncles and everyone else. And supposedly they're protecting us. So I'm honestly, I'm at my apex of being nice about it. Yes, I come from a military family. I come from a family of law enforcement. My sister is a chief probation officer in Missouri. Her husband is a detective. Every one of my siblings work in law enforcement. I'm the only one who does not. But if I called them and told them right now that our law enforcement here refuses to cooperate, do you know they would be like, why? Why? What are they hiding? This doesn't make any sense to me. So can we just do this, please? Please?
I think you're absolutely right, Cheryl.
Yeah. Okay, I totally agree with you, Cheryl, and I'm just trying to understand the intricacies of what we need more than, I agree with you wholeheartedly that there should be transparency and the public deserves to know this information. I'm just learning. I'm having a learning stance towards what is the information that we need and who has it and how do we get it. So I appreciate you. That's why I said, please push back against what I'm suggesting. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. And we can ask for everything. You have asked for everything. They did say initially that they would give it to us, right? That was the conversation that happened. So I hear what you're saying. Why would we walk back from that?
Yes.
Well, and I think we also can make the argument, not unlike what you said, Becky, is that probation is providing this information on intakes for youth. We're giving it on a monthly basis. Why is it that probation or the sheriff's office can't provide monthly data on bookings? You know?
Yeah.
And go by by charges. I know it's
that there. That doesn't stop us doing the other thing. That can happen. Yeah.
Exactly. As Jill said, this is an and, you know, because I think we're going to get a little bit of pushback. Probably not a little, we'll get some, but if we say this is a precedent and, you know, and we bring it to Melissa and we bring it to the full body, we can say, look, this is what we have and this is a story we can tell with youth. We can't tell this story yet because we don't have the bookings data.
I would bow to Jill and her expertise here, but when we were talking about going to the mayor's conference, so I understand that we're trying to get the arrest data, the Aries data, et cetera. But if we're talking about bookings data, that's the sheriff.
Right.
And since this committee, the oversight body makes recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, I'm wondering if this committee could make a request to the Board of Supervisors, either through one of the committees or directly to the board, to ask for the board to make a request to get that data for us. Sheriff does report to the Board of Supervisors.
Can I get clarification? I'm sorry. Yeah, Dr. Walker, I think that's an excellent idea, but I guess I'm just not really clear on what happened and what Denise, you're saying they're not giving at this point. Like, I mean, Melissa's new into the position. She wasn't there through the whole conversation with John Loudon.
Right.
You know, she's brand new into that position. That's the first woman ever in the Sheriff's Department to reach that position.
Yeah.
You know the drill. So I'm just curious what she said you can't have.
I don't think she said that we can't have anything. She has no updates. I think it's stalled just in the nature of the process at the chief of police meeting, where I thought it was going to be presented as the sheriff was supportive of this work and he was prepared to share it with us. I want to share this information with you, why it's important, what we're going to share. And I thought it would be an opt-out option. It wasn't an opt-out.
But again, I guess I'm still not clear on what information are they not able to provide to you, the booking data or the list that John Loudon, and I remember in one of the meetings, he went through and presented the information that was available. Have you shared that with Melissa? That document that John Loudon had shared about what was available and what could be shared. And then he asked for feedback on what other information you wanted. That was prior to going to the police chiefs.
Right. And I don't know that we have shared that with Melissa. I'm not honestly sure.
So I don't think that anybody's suggesting that Melissa is doing something. No. It's just that the information was a kind of a miss, right? So she said when we spoke with her at the last meeting, she said she needed to speak with the undersheriff Caston about the outcome. But then when she spoke with him, she said that he confirmed the discussion during the chief's meeting. He's waiting for the agencies to indicate that they approve of their Aries data being released. And that statement was not in keeping with the understanding that our team walked away from the meeting with, that it would be opting out instead of opting in. So that could be a matter of a lot of different things. Do you know what I mean? There could actually be no problem here. It could just be a matter of semantics and you know, the game of telephone, like you tell this person that you tell this person, or it could be that something has not been communicated.
So I'm wondering if we provide, or you, the big we, Denise, you provide Melissa with that document that John Loudon had presented as available information and say, here's the outline we were told we could get. And then, you know, you just ask for a timeline on it. You know, I can't walk in with a big stick. The sheriff is an elected official. My boss can certainly ask for information, as can the 5 board of supervisors, but you know, I don't have a big stick. And so that's why I suggested if you want the Aries data and you need permission from the cities, then we go to the city councils to let them direct that. And you're not waiting for somebody to give permission to somebody else. But, you know, but then there's other data that the sheriff can provide that doesn't require any permissions from the city.
Right.
Exactly.
I think
and that's where I was going with the bookings data. I mean, having the bookings data would be really important information for us as well.
And okay, so I want to, I'm sorry, Denise. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think now would be a good time to try to summarize all these different things so that we're on the same page. So I think you were starting to do that, but so go ahead. The things that can we just go one item at a time? Bookings data.
Bookings data.
Sheriff. And there aren't any, we don't have to do anything to make that happen besides ask them, hopefully.
For the bookings data, I think that's correct.
Okay, so bookings data from the sheriff, and all we hopefully need to do is ask. The second,
we want to be specific about what it is that we.
Yeah.
Yes, Bill.
I was going to say, what do we want from bookings data?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly.
So, I mean, would it be? I don't know what the numbers are, so I'm not sure if it's too much to ask. I mean, we could ask them to follow the structure of what probation has been providing.
We could.
Yeah, no, let me just add. So when we approached them with the ask, you know, we talked about, you know, what we were looking for, right? Like we laid out that we need race, ethnicity, gender, geography, offense data if they have it. Some of that, it became, well, I don't know if we can get it, or some of it is sectors that are not going to mean anything to you. So, you know, in terms of geographic location, that may be a little, you know, weird. And my original understanding from jump, back when John was still with us, was that as a courtesy to the various police chiefs, because they had data that would show where the arrests originated, he wanted to clear it with them. So I think even if we ask again, right, there's, unless that changes, that, you know, mentality about sort of running it by them, because we're going to know.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, but I would say that we are getting zip code data of where the arrest happened from probation, and I don't think the probation is asking them, and I'm pretty sure that's a completely analogous circumstance, isn't it?
I mean, I wouldn't know because I can't see what they see. I'm just reporting to you what they have said, and I think, you know, to the ultimate point that I was trying to make, right, is this seems to be, you know, as far as I can tell, you know, just a sort of an arbitrary decision or desire, right, to run this by, you know what I mean? So we're saying, but it's bookings data, you can just give it to us. You don't have to. But I think my understanding from John was that was what had been decided to do, or how to move forward, right? Because these individual agencies were going to be represented in the data, and we were going to know if somebody was getting booked from, you know, a particular police department, that there was a desire within the sheriff's office to get that okay, right, from each individual department before sharing that data with us.
Well, we can always ask, as Cheryl said, we can ask. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think it's, I mean, if we feel like, if somebody has decided that, I mean, I just can't imagine that with adults, it should be more private than with juveniles. If it's okay to do it for juveniles, then I don't understand why it wouldn't be okay to do it for adults. I hear what you're saying, Chris, but I'm just, I'm taking the more aggressive stance that I just feel like we should just ask them for it. And if that's what they want to come back with, then that's what they come back with.
And I think—
Are people okay with that? Because I feel like that, I mean, I don't want to stand alone if you guys don't agree.
Well, let me just share with you that when I joined the ORJ, one of my tasks was to look at recidivism. I have some jail data that it took a long time to get from the sheriff's office. I can share with you some of the fields that they were willing to share with me. And there was a good number of fields they weren't willing to share with me. But I think we should ask for everything and get as much as we can. They said no, they wouldn't give me the age or the birthday. Okay, that's fine. I mean, but I have booking date, arrest type, charge codes, disposition dates, sentencing. I do have sex and race. So
nothing geographic though?
No, nope. He wouldn't give me a zip code or anything, or the date of birth, out of fear that it would identify the individual. And, you know, but
well,
yeah.
I don't think we need their date of birth, but even an age range, right? Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. I would like to suggest, I don't know how formal we have to be right here. I would like to suggest that we request the same data that probation is providing us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone feel differently?
If that's a motion, I second.
Are we supposed to do that? Jill, can we make a motion like that if it's not agendized?
If it's not agendized as a vote?
I don't even think you need a motion or anything. You're just, I mean, it's the discussion item is the Aries data permission. So yeah. You're just asking Denise to go back and do an ask.
Well, yeah. I appreciate you, Dr. Walker, for seconding the idea. So
and by the way, Jill, I really appreciate it that you're asking me to make the ask. And I have talked to Becky and Chris about this, and I think it's a bad idea for me to make the ask. And I do for two reasons. Is with the sheriff's office, I wear two hats. I have some data and some analyses that I have done for another project, but I hesitate to cross lines with them with this. And I think it would be really more effective if the ask came from Becky as the data subcommittee chair.
I'm happy to do that.
And I'm happy to prepare the list of the fields, happy to do all that. But I think Becky, you or the subcommittee bringing forward to the full body needs to make that ask.
Yeah, happy to do that. I think it's a little cleaner too, because we don't want, I think we have to be careful of capacity issues for probation to be managing the data for everyone when everyone needs to be managing their own data. And so I think that's cleaner.
Right.
They shouldn't just be, even though I know Denise wants our data to look very nice and be precise, there's a capacity issue there. So I don't want it to come to her that way. It should come to us in the same way that probation gives it.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we're clear on that. Booking data with the same file profile as what we have from probation. That's our ask. Then the next thing would be the RIPA data, or if we ask for everything in regards to their contacts, is the RIPA data not, do we not want that separate? Or do we want it separated in terms of like response to calls and then self-initiated contacts? Cheryl, do you have an opinion about that?
Say it again.
Just wondering, like in terms of what we're asking, if we're asking for all of their contacts, do we want them to separate it between response to calls and self-initiated contacts?
I would. Don't you think, Christopher?
Sure. I mean, I think it gives you some level of insight if we can get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our ask. We're just going to ask for what we want. It's like a Christmas list, right? These are the things.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I and Christopher, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what Richmond does now, right?
I'm not sure.
Because I'm just going to tell you guys that Richmond already is ahead of the game on this stuff.
Do we have a copy of the file structure that they are providing? That would probably, I mean, if we have a good example, we know that's like knowable data. Maybe we could present that to them. Or is that what you guys did at that meeting?
No, I just mentioned it, but I'd have to go back and look in some archives, but I remember her showing something back on the task force level of what she was doing, and they were way ahead of this. They've been doing this for years.
Okay, so maybe we could ask Visa to give us a copy of how they're reporting it, and then use that as a structure for what we're asking from all the other municipalities.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I also want to just throw in some tidbit that I learned from Brian Vanderland is that RIPA reporting also includes youth. So it's not just adults. So we'll get both youth and as well as adults in those files, which is great.
And it can be separated because they're-
and it can, yes. Yeah.
And so that ask is going to go to both the mayors and to the city managers? Or are we first starting by asking the police chiefs again? Or do we feel like we've asked them? Do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm just trying to be clear about what our next step is. So when we walk away, we're clear and we're all.
Well, are we going to ask for the RIPA data from the sheriff's office? They have their own, they're reporting that.
So in that way, they are both they're just another agency. They're kind of like we are as a county office, like we're the county office, but we also run our own program. So they're similar in that regard. Like, so we're asking them to participate as an agency. They have their own stops and their own RIPA data, right?
Well, they have the RIPA data that they're required to report to the feds, to the DOJ.
But what I'm saying is that They're not collecting from the other agencies, right? They're
no,
right.
No, each agency does it on their own, but we can get it from the sheriff's office.
We can't get it all. Oh, we can get it all from the sheriff's department?
We can only get, if the sheriff agrees, we can only get it for those stops made by the sheriff's office.
Right. So they were like, for this purpose, they are
one agency.
They're like the Lafayette Police. It's the sheriff's office. Well, actually, that's not a good example because they're a contract city, but they're like I don't know, what's a city that isn't like that? The Concord Police. The Concord Police, the sheriff's agency that includes their contract cities.
For the unincorporated.
And
unincorporated, right.
So, but my question is, what is, when we walk away from this meeting, who are we approaching next? I mean, it sounds like maybe we have to go by the way of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we have to go by the way of the mayors and the city managers to get those places like Concord that are not in the sheriff's purview. Correct?
Yeah.
I agree. Yep.
So that's the quickest way, I think, to get it from all the various agencies rather than going one agency at a time.
And so we would just be asking the sheriff to provide their own data.
Their own RIPA data.
Yes.
As well as their own bookings data.
Right. So, and not just their RIPA, but all their response to calls too.
Okay.
Okay. So that means that the city managers, the mayors, and the sheriff only for their own. And that should be easier for them to respond to because they don't have to have permissions, passive or otherwise. They're just giving us their own data. Right? I want to make sure I'm making sense before I'm saying this to somebody else. Yeah? Okay. So, and that's going to be by way of Jill, your staff, Monica is going to hopefully get us an invite to the city managers meeting. Is that right?
I am going to talk to my boss and I'll let you know what that feedback is.
Okay. And then for the mayors?
Same.
Okay. The same process there. And then for the sheriff, we can just reach out directly to Melissa and ask her, right?
With the outline that John Loudon provided, I would say.
Yes, yes.
Right. Maybe I missed it and everyone knows but me, but what all is in the RIPA data?
Oh boy. You know, it's that big old 170-page document that speaks to the officer perception of racial identity of the individual that was stopped. I believe it also holds stop information. I'm not sure of the details, quite honestly, but what I know is the whole point about it is that it is law enforcement perception of racial identity.
Okay, all right, got it.
I think that it is attached to one of the previous agendas or minutes from
all right.
It is, yeah. I just don't remember which one it is.
But that's a very, very good question, Dr. Walker. We want to make sure we know what we're asking for.
Well, and I keep going back. I think we need to have a precise list of what we're asking for. We can't just ask for response to calls or RIPA data or bookings data. We need to say bookings data with these attributes and characteristics. And Becky, I can work with you and pull together some of this stuff, but you know,
well, why don't we ask? When do we meet again? May 27th.
Yes.
That's after the next large body, right?
I think that's right. I think the full body meets the first week of May.
So what about if when in the large body for the report out, you know, I can summarize kind of where we're at in terms of this whole process. And hopefully we'll have some more information before the full body meets about the feasibility of going to the mayors and the city manager. So we can present that idea at that meeting at the large body. And then when we have our meeting on May 27th, we can agendize and bring the proposed file structure so everybody can review it and we all have a clear understanding of what we're going to ask for. Does that sound like okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Anything else about this item?
And I would also ask, you know, Cheryl, you have mentioned that BISA has done some part of this, kept track of this, but if we could get a file layout for what she's keeping track of, because I'm not sure if she's keeping track of exactly the same data and field elements as we are looking to for RIPA, or if she has some other mechanism to do that.
I'm sure it's not the same. I just know she
Okay.
keeps track of a lot of information that
Okay.
nobody else is doing.
Okay.
I will email her and ask her to send us the whatever she's publicly reporting so we can look at that and bring it to the next meeting.
Or a data dictionary or something, that would be great. Okay.
I just know she's just miles ahead of everybody else because Richmond has been doing this since Magnus was there. They just started doing it just because, right?
Yep.
And she just took it another level after she took over. They just believe in transparency, which is, you know, they're a smaller city, but they just started doing more. So,
well, goodness, it's good that we have them as a model to point to.
Well, I think what we're going to be up against is what they said in the police chief's meeting is, are you going to fund us to do this?
Well, and like I said then, they're already funded. They can figure it out. And some of the other chiefs told them the same thing. We have to figure that out amongst ourselves. So, yeah, I mean.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we get pushback along those lines. So.
Yeah, but they always push back. I mean,
I agree.
I like that the chiefs themselves said that they need to figure it out, right? Yeah. We're not going to volunteer. We shouldn't volunteer to do it for them.
No, I learned from your comment previously, Cheryl. Thank you for that.
Yeah, let them do it.
Boundaries, Denise. Yes, we're getting it. Okay, are we good with this item? I really appreciate everybody kind of indulging having a longish conversation about it, but I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page so that we, you know, are following up in a way that reflects what the whole subcommittee feels. So thank you for that. Okay, so we kind of already have moved to item 5, which is discuss the plan for presenting, sharing data with the public. And the first part there is to look at that DOJ data, and then we are going to have a conversation about the work plan and what that might look like in terms of a suggestion for how we could meet the objectives of the work plan. So Denise, you want to start by walking us through the data, and then we can.
Sure. So page 17 of your packet includes 2 pages, 4 charts. First page is among adults. This is all data that comes from the Department of Justice. This is all public domain data. I was able to download it without any special privileges. It comes from Contra Costa County only for adults 18 and above, speaks to their misdemeanor arrests by race and ethnicity and year. So the first chart is from 2015 to 2019 for adult misdemeanors. And what you can see is that white adults are much more likely than the other groups to be charged with a misdemeanor arrest.
And this isn't adjusted for population size, right?
No, it's not at all. No, this is just about how the misdue arrests are distributed by race and ethnicity. Okay, when you go down to the second chart, which is the percentage of adults that had felony arrests during the same period of time, what you see is that the Black community has what, 35 to 40% have adult felony arrests, when what we know is that their proportion in the population is much less than that. So this clearly shows a disparity across the board. The Latinx community is about 25%, I would say roughly. That's comparable to what the general population distribution is.
Maybe
and then,
less even.
Pardon me?
Maybe a little less even.
I thought it was about 26%. I could be wrong.
I'm always looking at youth data, and so they have a larger proportion of the
yeah, but it's somewhere in that.
It's 26%. Yeah.
Is it 26? Okay. And then what we have is the white population, which I think is something like 65%, 66%, is way low. So this is clearly showing a disparity among the adults for the last 5 years that data is available for. Now, I did try to get the 2020 data. It is not available yet. DOJ does not release it until about 6 months after the end of the year because they're waiting for jurisdictions to clean up any, errors in their data. But come the next 3 to 6 months, I should be able to update this and add a 2020 column here. Now, the data is same graphics, but for youth. And what you see on the first chart for youth is that disproportionately Black youth are getting picked up for misdemeanor arrests. Really 4, 5 times what their distribution is in the population. Really, really apparent there. And then you can look at the felony arrests. Same thing.
Worse.
It's pretty blatant. So I'm putting these out there to all of you as when I think about what we're commissioned to do for this data subcommittee, which is to share data. No, this isn't a dashboard that's going to be updated like on a daily or weekly basis. This might just be updated on an annual basis. But I suggest that we consider posting these graphics or putting it forward to the overall body that we propose to post these graphics as indicators of our work and the disparities that exist in our county. This comes from public domain, California Department of Justice data. It's a reliable source, and it sort of is attached to one of our objectives. In an effort, objective 2, create greater transparency and accountability. The ORJ shall publish data related to the demographic, criminal justice, law enforcement, and education patterns. So we could do this, and the question is, what website would we put it on? And, where would we do that? And how do we want to make changes in, the graphic kind of titling and stuff like that? And we probably would. We would want to say when this data was downloaded, it was downloaded by me. If you have questions, see me, the Office of Reentry and Justice, we can do that. And, make sure that we're very clear that this is Contra Costa County only. But I think this is something to show that we are moving forward in this direction. And my hope is that the community is going to see it, and then they're going to start asking other questions. And it's going to start putting some pressure to get more data to answer those other questions. Like, well, what are the dispositions? What are the charges? All that kind of stuff. And that we might get some more momentum is my hope. So that's my proposal.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think that, there are many layers to the charge that we have. And I think that one thing that is really good about this is that it is easy to understand. And so I think when we're thinking about, public consumption of data, simple is sometimes a really good, not that that's all we do, but that's something, right? So that, and the only thing I think that would aid in painting the picture is to have like a shadow of each bar that shows the percentage and the population so that it's, so that the disparity is graphically.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to do that in my charts. I'm a decent Excel person, but I'm not savvy. So maybe we can get some help with that. Yeah. But yeah, that would be phenomenal.
Any other comments, thoughts from the panel or anyone?
Well, I totally agree with big transparency and putting it on a website where it's available. I guess the question for us as a advisory committee is whose website? I mean, we really don't have a website. I would assume that the Office of Racial Equity, which is now being developed by the board, will have its own website at some point in time. But obviously that's a little bit down the road until there actually is an office and a director and a staff and it's all appointed. So there's a process going on, we all know. And the board during the budget hearing was pushing on Tuesday, was pushing for things to happen more quickly with that development. So I'm just throwing that out there. You really want it in a website that's accessible, that's knowable, and I'm not sure where that is right now.
Don't we have a racial justice oversight body website or page?
Not that I know.
Yes, and
we know about it.
I thought we did. I'm just.
I think Nicole was saying that yes, and she's been learning about the ORJ website and updating it recently.
Oh, really?
Okay, here we go.
Well, I didn't know about it. And so, you know, yeah. So
yeah, there is one out there.
There is. So it's task force agendas and then.
Reports, yeah. They look like there are some reports up above.
Right, but we could do something about that.
I think that you know, going back to the larger body, that can just be a question that we'll to start. Yeah. You know, we have some things we'd like to put up. Where do we
exactly.
Okay, any more comments about these graphics before we move on to, we only have 9 minutes left, but to talk about the work plan briefly? I think we've been talking about the work plan all this time, so I don't think it'll be undoable to do that. Anything else about these graphics?
Just, I would say to think about when you get public comment or when you have community participating, you know, seeing if you can get some insight from them about where, you know, how accessible they think some of this is, or what websites they might suggest that everyone knows, and or, you know, the use of social media, which is not exactly the same as a website, but is, you know, maybe accessible to folks if there are Twitter accounts and things like that that could be operated for this task, or that maybe certain agencies have already.
I wonder if the full body would be opposed to putting out a press release on it.
Also a good option.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's turn to the, oh, and I just want any public comment. I hope that, I mean, we're such a small group here right now. Emmylou, do you have anything to add to what we've talked about so far?
I don't. I just really appreciate the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I feel like you're on the committee because you're here every time. Dedication. Okay, so looking at the work plan, starting on page 19, I found the little place I was looking for. So the first thing is what we've been talking about for a large portion of this is our objective to support the collection reporting of accurate data in all criminal justice and law enforcement agencies countywide. We're just working on getting it right now. I guess we're not really working on the accuracy of the data that's reported, but certainly part of that is creating these links. So I think we're working on that. Does anybody see any activity listed in there that we need to consider? I guess it's just the first two that we're, because the other ones say when we have an office. Links to publicly available data, as we were just speaking of. And we could also put the links to the data quest and the school data that's on there too.
Yes. If you and Lynn and the superintendents agree, right?
Well, I mean, it's public.
Can we do that? It's public now.
It's public. It's complete. It's data quest. It's you know, through the CDE. But yes, I should probably. I like my job.
Oh, that's great. That's not unlike my data or the DOJ data, right?
Yeah, anybody can get
public domain.
Completely public data. Okay, so then the deliverable is maintain a website or web page with information and links, as we were just discussing. So I think we're moving on that one, right? But the part that I was trying to find earlier that I couldn't is number 3. Implement a marketing and advertising initiative to acknowledge and publicly praise government agencies and LEA CBOs voluntarily collecting and providing additional requested data. Initiative can also include publicizing agencies not collecting and sharing data as requested. So I just want to say that that's in there. I don't think we're at that point yet because we're still trying to wrap our head around it, but I mean, it is in there. Okay, so objective 2 is in an effort to create greater transparency and accountability of county criminal justice and law enforcement agencies, the ORJ shall publish data related to the demographic, criminal justice, law enforcement, educational patterns present within the county by race and ethnicity. We're working on that. We need the data.
We've been doing that, Becky. We've done that the last 2 months.
Yeah, true. And then the deliverable would be, as resources in public agency and law enforcement participation allows, develop local web-based data dashboards for public access. Data should be presented by race and ethnicity, easily accessible to the public and updated annually. So that's the expectation there. And I should just say that I did, Dr. Walker and I did talk a little bit about maybe seeking some assistance from the really good people in his organization who have updated the coronavirus website, which is very publicly available and obviously much more complicated than what we're trying to do. But once we have an idea of what we do want to present, Dr. Walker kindly offered to connect us with the people who have the expertise about how they have done that. So thank you, Dr. Walker. Hopefully those people will soon be out of business doing that. Not too soon, but eventually. Okay, objective 3. Office of Reentry and Justice shall support analysis and interventions implemented through the RJTF to measure efficacy and assess impact on racial disparities. All activities under this objective to be reported to the RJOB and any other bodies, collectives identified by the Board of Supervisors. Analysis and interventions implemented. So I guess that's as we're moving forward and there's more coming out of the other subcommittees and more, you know, diversion and like proactive preventative projects, right? To kind of like keep track.
Yeah, I would think that's what this means.
Let's look at the deliverable. As resources become available, develop annual reports surrounding criminal justice, law enforcement, educational outcomes by race and ethnicity. Pending data availability, these reports would also assess programmatic outcomes and interventions by race, ethnicity, and provide recommendations to improve programs and practices as necessary. So that's definitely something I think in the future, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. I feel better looking at that. And those are the things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, right? I think this work plan looks different than the majority of others. Obviously, there are a lot of big sort of ticket items happening in each. But for you guys, you have 3 main objectives and then a whole bunch of stuff underneath each that you probably want to do. Some of that stuff coming later as more data becomes available or as programs actually or interventions or things that we're implementing actually take shape and begin. So it's yeah, I think we are tracking in the right direction. But a lot of this is going to be long-term commitment to get to the place that we're trying to go here.
Absolutely. I just want to thank everybody for their dedication to this committee too, because many people here have been here for, you know, it's been a couple of years now. And so I think that through that persistence and having people, and Ms. Cheryl, I want to thank you for coming, even though you're not even, you know, assigned to this particular subcommittee. We appreciate you being here so much. So thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Or should we close the meeting?
I just want to acknowledge Becky's leadership. You're doing a great job taking us through this. So thank you. Yeah.
Bravo. Yes, I agree, Bill.
Thank you. I care deeply about the subject, and so it's something that I don't mind putting my energy towards.
Well, we're lucky to have you. So you're doing great.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. Okay, well, with 1 minute to spare, let's close the meeting at 4:59. Thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
Bye.